Today we have a 2011 IQ Shift and we are going to do the exhaust valves. We're going to clean those up. Pretty simple job. We've got a needle nose pliers. We're going to take this hose off right here. One clip, and then each valve has 4 10mm bolts. So let's get that stuff off. All right, now we're going to use brake clean and maybe some gum out. We'll get that carbon off there and use Scotch brite. I don't want to get too aggressive on that metal, so we'll get it cleaned up. After Carb Cleaner and some Scotch brite. Don't want to be real aggressive on that softer metal, but it's cleaned up. And also you want to clean out the, you probably have a lot of two-stroke oil inside of that chamber there, and clean that out. And then you can put this back, wipe all that off. The orientation is these indentations. So where the hose attached, that was at the top, and indentations face up. So that's how it's going to go back together. 2 long bolts on the side, that's what holds us assembly to the cylinder. The top and the bottom bolt hold the case on. 10mm going into aluminum. They just have to be snugged up, not very tight. I use a 1/4 inch drive, 1/4 inch ratchet to tighten those down. All right, we'll put her back on the sled. Okay, this left one, I'm going to give you an option. We cleaned that one, we got it back in. This one now, these 2 longer bolts on the sides, they hold the exhaust valve to the cylinder. These one on the top and the bottom, the shorter ones, there's a spring in here, and that just keeps the plastic case over the exhaust valve. So this one, I'm going to take off. I loosened these top and the bottom. That's why that spring is pushing against that. This one, I'm just going to remove it from the cylinder right by removing these longer bolts, and then we'll just pull it off. Keeping in mind there's a gasket in there. We want to not tear that. If we tear it, we got to replace it. The PTO side, normally the gasket stays on the exhaust valve. The magneto side, normally it stays on the cylinder. So we'll see what it does this time. But anyway, we're going to take this off as a unit this time, and then we'll take the plastic cover off at the bench. Yeah, all cleaned up, ready to go back on the machine. This side, the PTO side, the gasket did stick to the exhaust valve here, and so I did have to clean it up. I probably should have showed you in the video what I do, because a lot of people do struggle with that. I don't really enjoy it, but it is a necessary evil, part of the job that we have to do. My tools of the trade, the way I do it, my go-to is a razor blade and some fine sandpaper, emery cloth. And then actually what I used in this case is a heat gun. You can heat up the gasket that's left on there. It does remove easier. I have used gasket removal before. It does work. You spray it on, you leave it for about 10 minutes, and it does tend to soften it up. I think the heat gun works just as good, if not better. Last but not least, the die grinder. It is a little aggressive. You have to be very careful. Not a recommendation if you're only doing this once in a while. So that's what I did. The part number on the new Polaris is right there. And let's see. So we are ready to put this back on the machine. Hey, remember your orientation. It's going to go back on like that. The indentations are up, and the rubber boot is seated. Now keep in mind, once the cover's back on, which you can put on before you put it on the machine, remember the top, the shorter bolts top and bottom hold the plastic cover on. The longer bolts left and right is what holds it to the the engine. But once you put the cover on, you don't want to, I usually put the cover on after I put it back on the, after I put the exhaust valve back on the engine, means you don't want to turn this, because that turns the rubber boot and it'll tear it if the plastic cover's back on there. So anyway, orientation is important, and that's how it's going to go back on, just like that. That job is done. Very easy job. You will notice low end increase in power, and you know it's done right. Remember, those 10 millimeter bolts do not have to be torqued very tight. Pay attention again when you take them off. They are not very tight. They're over a plastic cover going into aluminum, so just be careful with that. They do not have to be over tightened.